Hello, my name is Veronica Powers. I'm a BCBA. These materials are from CPPA Grant Initiative at Wareham Public Schools. And today we will talk about a very difficult topic. We will talk about punishment. I will talk about what does it really mean? Is it necessary? How does it work? I have often parents coming to me and asking about appropriate punishment or if it's really even something they should be using. And the topic of punishment is very sensitive and difficult topic, so I'll dive into it, this topic a little bit more today. So what is punishment from ABA behavior perspective? From ABA behavior perspective, punishment is when you as a parent, as educators or BCBAs, therapists, we deliver some sort of stimulus, and as a result, the child's behavior decreases in the future. It happens less often. And typically when we think about punishment, we think about the punishment for negative behaviors. So if the child misbehave certain way, we deliver some sort of punisher, and this behavior does not occur as often in the future or lessens over time. But in ABA behavior world, we can also punish positive behaviors without even knowing we're doing it. Overall, punishment, it's a tool that should be used very carefully, and as a BCBAs, we use punishment really as a really last resort. We use all kinds of different techniques, such as different reinforcers. We looked at triggers, what triggers a child, how they communicating with us, what they trying to tell us, are they showing any signals of distress. We are teaching alternative behaviors and new skills before we even think about using punishment. And even if we do use punishment, we always pair with some sort of reinforcement or opportunity to learn a new skill or a new communication, how the child can communicate better their wants and needs. The goal is to reduce unwanted behaviors, but it should never be used by itself in isolation. So how often the punishment happens in a typical household? It can be part of regular learning. So especially in people houses, you might use it without being aware of it. You might just tell your child to go to timeout, and that's a form of punishment. But you can also punish, in a sense, some of the behaviors you want them to have, some of the new skills. So, for example, your child might have an aversive reaction to specific food, maybe some healthy foods. You try to teach them how to eat vegetables, right? Healthy, good vegetables. And if they have aversive reaction, if that situation was more of aversive and punishing for them, then in the future they will avoid eating those vegetables. So the behavior, the good behavior you try to teach, the good skill, the healthy habits of eating, they get punished, and now the child eats less vegetables. And that happens often, with introduction of the vegetables that they might have a little bit more bitter taste, like broccoli, or Brussels sprouts, and the kids avoid this until like later on when they're more of a teenager or even older, when they try it again. So unfortunately, sometimes without thinking, you can even punish some of those good habits, by the way how you present, the information, the stimulus to your child. Other typical home examples, I mentioned the timeout. So a lot of parents use that. Timeout is basically break from activity. If you use a timeout, it should be very short, especially with the little ones. It should be 1 to 3 minutes, no longer, and should be under supervision. So you don't send your child away to timeout and let them think about it, because they don't have necessary capability to think about it. The timeout is just to have a quick break from activity and to reset the activity, reset the expectation, and you should be present for that timeout. Another typical home example is losing of privileges. So that means with older kids, it will be things like they cannot go out with friends, maybe they grounded, right? Or maybe they don't get the pocket money, or but with the younger kids, what I see typically in the houses when I go work with parents, I see withholding things like iPad, withholding toys, skipping a turn in a game or a play. So those are the loss of privileges. Also, what I see typically in people homes, it's fixing the problem. So if the child spills something on purpose, not by mistake because they were not paying attention, but on purpose, right? They spill something, they will fix it. Or when the child takes and on purpose throw away something to the trash. I saw recently a child throwing away a musical instrument into trash for a reason of getting a little bit of attention, and the parent asked them to pick that instrument from a trash. So that would be another example. So they are fixing the problem. So for the little ones, let's talk about what's appropriate for punishers. When you do use punishment, you want to be mindful that you want to that as much as you deliver this punisher, you want to also make sure that it's very brief and very gentle. If you're doing natural consequences, then for example, if you say to the child, you threw the toy and broke it, so therefore you cannot play it, so that will be age appropriate punisher, so you don't run right away to a store and replace that toy. Withdrawing attention for negative behavior. So for example, if you're not reacting to child's whining, because they trying to get some sort of attention from you, or some sort of toy, or specific, or take you to McDonald's, right? Or buy you a new doll or a new toy car. Then and you withdraw that attention for that whining, then you in a sense withdrawing you providing in a sense a punisher, right, for it. And when they ask nicely, then you provide that attention. Also, using a quiet chair for a few minutes, that might be age appropriate punisher. So it should be 1 to 3 minutes, shouldn't be long. So if they escalated, they might be not listening, they might be throwing toys, maybe pushing you, scratching, then you can use a quiet chair just for a few minutes to just reset a situation. So those are some of the age appropriate punishers. I will talk also about how to use this age appropriate punishers, so what to avoid and what to do when you use them. So what to never do. When you're using any sort of those punishers that I mentioned before, so use of a quiet chair, for example, you should never yell or hit your child. The punishment overall should be mild and used when in control of your own behavior. So if you are feeling that you cannot control your behavior, you're very frustrated, then that's not a good time to use that punishment. Maybe it's time for you to reset yourself and walk away from situation, gather your thoughts, self-control, and then you can provide support to your child. If you yell and hit, you will damage the child's confidence in the future. It will damage the trust that you're building with your child. So even if you do some of those little punishers, such as cleaning up after themselves, so sitting for a few minutes in a quiet chair, you do not want to ever hit or yell at your child. If you provide some of those punishments I mentioned before here on this slide, such as natural consequences or withdrawing attention or using a quiet chair, you want to give a brief explanation to your child so they know what's happening. So you can say, you are sitting in a chair because you were throwing toys. Take a few deep breaths. Mommy will be right back, or daddy will be right back. So they know what is the expectation, that first they will sit in the chair, then you will be there to support them. So again, I spoke about it in my previous video, but basically use this first and then language when you're providing those supports for your child. Now, what to remember to do when you use this punishment. So always, as I mentioned before, pair your punishment with some sort of reinforcement or skill building. So skill building might be functional communication training, antecedent approaches. That's how we call them in our ABA language. But what it really means is if you put your child in a quiet chair / timeout, right? You teach them alternative responses, alternative behavior. So you say, you were throwing toys. You need to sit here for a minute, but take a deep breath. So or you say, or read this book. So you teach them some sort of coping skill. So it always comes with some sort of alternative behavior. If, for example, the child grabs a toy from you and or from the other child and without asking, so you might provide the natural consequence of stopping that behavior and return the toy to the child who was playing with it. But then you follow with that practicing functional communication by saying, ask your friend, can I have a turn? Or when can I have my turn? So you always follow up with something. You just don't use it by itself. If you use it by itself, it will not work in a long term. It will create a situations that your child might actually display more of a heightened emotional responses, more aggression, more avoidance, more escape behavior. So it's a very really last resort when you use it. But if you use it, you need to pair with some sort of skill building, with some sort of reinforcement, with some sort of communication. You're teaching them either coping skills or how to take turns, or you can recently I spoke with a parent who was saying that her child was pushing her a lot, and the punishment by itself didn't work, but until that parent during the quiet chair time, the timeout time, explained to a child, next time when you try to push me, just say, I need a break. So this parent combined, in a sense, a punishment procedure, right? The quiet chair with skill building, with teaching a child how to communicate effectively. And guess what? The child on the third try did it. So, and within the week, the behavior stopped because the child started using "Can I have a break?" sentence. Okay, I need a break. You want to use punishment as a last resort. Never use punishment unrelated to the behavior. So if it's better, I know that sometimes parents use like loss of privileges, so, and then they can be very intense, such as if you don't, if the child does something or does not do something they're supposed to, then they lose iPad for a week, and that's a very intense punishment. The punishment should be mild. It should be a teaching kind of component, a teaching tool, not something that it lasts a very long time, and it should be related to that behavior. So often those punishment, such as sit down in a quiet chair because you were throwing toys, it's more reasonable because it is related to the situation. A consistency always matters, and more than even the severity, right? So you don't need to provide super severe punishers, but you need to be consistent. So everybody who's taking care of a child need to have the same expectation. So that means all caregivers, mom and dad and grandparents and aunties and uncles, and other caregivers in that child's life, they need to be on the same page. And if they not, then you need to have that conversation so someone does not contraindicate your work, because then you kind of working uphill battle. If within few weeks, typically happens much more faster within a week, but even if it sometimes takes a little bit longer. So even within a few weeks things do not improve, you want to reevaluate whether your reinforcers are strong enough. If you need to increase your reinforcers when you provide those punishers, or if you need to increase more focus on functional communication, how to teach some more of a coping skills, or how the child asks for a break or help. So you need to see if you need to focus on other components when you deliver those punishers. So that is, in a very short version, what the punishment is and punishers are. It's a very sensitive topic. There's a lot of things to consider when you're using the punishment and punishers. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you have any questions, please reach out at the email provided. Thank you.